When I started this project, and I actually started it pre-COVID, made an early attempt at this album and went into the studio with some great musicians, a great producer, and it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't feeling like what I wanted it to be. And then, of course, the lockdowns came, so that put everything way on the back burner. But it also realigned some things I was thinking. There's some songs that were on it and that I wrote in the before days, before that all happened, that I wasn't feeling in the same way after having been through that with the whole wide world. It sort of made what I was doing feel out of date almost instantly. When something like that happens, that can happen, I think. And for a while, I think I've heard a lot of people, I just didn't feel like playing music. It wasn't like, hey, we're locked down, I'm gonna go right to the guitar. I was a little brokenhearted too, because I had come home from C2C. I was ready to play in London for the first time on the O2 stage, O2 Arena stage. And that was the beginning of that lockdown, is nope, everybody going home. And of course, there were much worse things going on elsewhere. So that sort of put it, as I say, on the back burner. But then, as we all started to live through that, slowly you saw that guitar over there in the corner. It's like, yeah, go pick it up. And some other songs were coming. And then a lot of the songs on this I actually got to write on Zoom, which I had not done a ton of. Some of them I wrote from Barbados when I was shooting the second season of Outer Banks. I was over there in my hotel room with a couple of friends in Nashville, writing in a bar somewhere, or different things like that. So it's sort of like the grass through the sidewalk. It started to come back up again. And underneath all this is the fact that it's kind of wild that it's taken me this long to do my first album. I've got a whole lot of singles out there, a world record number, actually, which is really crazy. But the album always seemed different to me. The album always seemed, I just hold albums as an art form in such high regard that I didn't want to take it frivolously at all. I wanted it to have a meaning and to have a through line and to have to be a there. So in the end, all that procrastinating, I'm grateful for it. It made it something much more meaningful to me. So the answer, the short answer to that question that I've spoken so long about is that what my goal was to do it, was to finally complete it. It just took so long in a way. There's a whole lot of paralysis of analysis, like what's it gonna be? And more fundamentally, who am I? My songs are so eclectic and they're so all over the place in a way that, in general, I don't mind. I'm a little bit like that. I don't want to just live in one place all the time. I had an acting coach who said authentic emotion travels. And very few people just stay in one vibe or one emotion always. So any room I'd walk into, I was up for whatever song anybody ever wanted to write. I was never like, well, we need to write this kind of song for this track on this album. So it more or less came together from just all these songs I had pre and post lockdowns. And then the title track actually came with my producer, Marshall Altman, and with Jimmy Yeary. As we were immersed in all these themes of all these songs we were gathering, we just did a songwrite one day, and maybe not surprisingly, all those things were so in us that the title track, sort of the thematic track of the whole thing, came out. Well, it's obviously such an important part of the project. When I was always looking to make an album, the big part of it is, what is the through line? What is the cohesive thing that makes this an album? And clearly the first thing is the artist and the songwriter. I was a co-writer on all the songs, so I knew that was a big thing. But then I also wanted it to have a real vision, for what it would sound like. And I had been waiting a long time to find exactly who that would be, and then I was very fortunate that a really great friend, my publisher actually, Ree Geyer from Rensong, said, I think you need to meet Marshall Altman. Ree didn't know that I had already met Marshall briefly. I'd seen him in a Bluebird round with his friend Dylan Altman, and maybe with Eric Pasley at the time. I'm trying to remember, I think it was. But in any event, I was already a fan of the music, and I had actually typed in somewhere on my phone, reach out to Marshall, because I knew he was a producer too. So it took Ree saying it, and I said, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. And then as soon as I met Marshall, it just all started to flow. There was a tremendous simpatico there. Like, I got him, he really got me. And he was interested, and he liked the songs he'd heard a lot, and so he just said, let's hear them all. And so we just started playing some songs, and in this town, getting somebody to open their ear to your music, especially when you're not already a name out there. It's a beautiful thing, and feeling and hearing all to see what moved him and what he started to think. But above all, from the very beginning, he was saying, I just want to be this conduit towards you making the album that you want to make. I'll have opinions, and he definitely had his opinions. But that was the very beginning, and it was a clear beginning. It was like fresh air rushing into a room that had been a warehouse of all these songs and all these ideas. Fresh air and sunlight just came pouring in, and that was Marshall. The rest of it is Marshall actually gathered the band. Marshall collected this incredible group of players. And another small, beautiful thing was, and when I went there on the day, he also chose where we were going to record, and Marshall had no idea that I had done most of my Nashville recording at Sound Emporium. And I just love that place so dearly. I have so many great memories of recording so many great Deacon Claiborne songs there. And my friend Juanita runs the place, and I love her dearly. And so when I heard it was that, I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I get to do this new thing in a place where I'm very comfortable. And then I show up and I meet all these musicians. I knew Fred Eltringham. I'd worked with Fred before once or twice, and just always been blown away by what an incredible drummer he is. The rest of them were all brand new to me, except when the keyboardist walked in, and that was Tim Lauer. And Tim Lauer had been the executive producer of Nashville's music for the final couple seasons there. And so he and I also had a shorthand. So in all this newness, there was a couple things that made me feel very at home, very comfortable, and of course Marshall did too. And that's pretty much it. And once we walked in there, I was just thrilled to find that these incredible musicians, you know, they're all hired guns in this town in the best possible way. You're just getting the best players in there, but they had not heard these songs before we gave them to them. They hadn't played them again and again like I had, but it was really exciting to watch them instantly buy in. They became their songs on those days, and that happened very, very quickly. I saw the enthusiasm, the spark, the light in the eye. All the ideas started coming out, and I loved them all. So yeah, thank you, Ree, and then on to Marshall, and then that just opened the whole world up. It's so special because it doesn't have to happen. As I said, I had an early attempt, and again, they were all incredible players and great people, and they bought in too, but it just wasn't clicking. So finally when it did, it was like, this is it, this is the stuff. I should say that a big part of that was all the pre-production. Marshall's a big pre-production guy, and I am too. It gives you that luxury of just spending time with all the songs without this, the cash register ticking, as you say, on the studio. So that by the time you're telling these musicians what you want, you're very specific, you really know. And because of that, then they can go outside of that structure and ask about new things or add other things. But man, the time we spent with this was just my favorite part. One of the things that song means to me or reminds me of is the magic of songwriting and the magic of a co-write. My whole life before I got to Nashville, I was writing by myself, and I have so many songs that I legitimately love that I wrote by myself, and I still do in this town from time to time. You just get an idea that hits you, and so you sit and you write it, and you go, oh, there's that. The thing I love about the co-write so much is you don't know where it's going to go, because here's this other voice in the song, and or more than one. In this case, it was John Knight, CSAC Songwriter of the Year this year, John Knight, and a writer of so many songs that I just love so much. My favorite perhaps being Boy, that he wrote for Lee Brice, and I think We Were Us, or, Keith Urban, just so many. You guys know, you're American Songwriter. And I showed up. I've been wanting to write with John forever. That's another thing in this town. Some of my friends are some of the greatest songwriters, but you don't want to constantly be going, hey, can we write? And sometimes you do say it, but it just doesn't happen for a while. It finally happened. And I walk in, and of course, being a great songwriter, he had a title. He had a great title, and it was Somewhere in the Sunshine. But the magic of songwriting is, what I've learned while I'm here is, you got to bring what you are in that moment and where you are in that moment. Don't abandon all that just to move to the idea necessarily. You might have to, but initially, maybe you should just be honest and deal with how you feel in that moment. How I was feeling in that moment about the title Somewhere in the Sunshine was not what he was thinking in terms of tequila, sand, you and me, Somewhere in the Sunshine, and that would have been a great song. Perhaps an even more popular, radio-friendly song, I don't know. But I was carrying something with me. I had a friend who had been battling cancer for so long, and he was nearing the end of his journey. And the conversations that he and I had been having were about what comes next, the afterlife, and his faith, and what he looked towards and what he feared. And because we had spoken of those things so much recently, and I was sort of carrying the weight of what he was going through a little bit, even though I had this great songwriting appointment I wanted. So I didn't abandon that. I said to John, I said, I love that title, but I'm wondering if maybe we take it another way. And that other way is, I lost that friend, his family. I lost a wonderful husband, a wonderful father. But our faith tells us that he is somewhere in the sunshine. And that all that suffering he did and all that fighting he did, that's ended. And as the song said, he's just fine. He's in a better place than we are right now. So once we got that concept that we were going to write that Somewhere in the Sunshine, I believe it was John that might have had the idea that specifically one of us just said, well, why don't we make it from the point of view of the person that is there and reassuring those that are left behind, don't you cry for me, I'm just fine. And then once we did that, we really wanted it to be, it's such a big concept, obviously, but I wanted it to be, and this is true almost always, very conversational, very simple in its statement. I didn't want it to be, whatever emotion creeps into the performance, that's, honestly, I'd rather fight it off, because the person saying this is talking to somebody who's broken in pieces with grief, but they're not. They're just saying, hey. And so that's why I love the first lines so much. It just sounds like something you'd say on the phone, like if you were in the best place you've ever been and you got on the phone with the person you love the most and they go, how's it going? You go, you should see this place. It's beautiful. It's every place we ever tried to find. So once we started to understand that's where we were coming from, it actually came rather quickly. One of the things I love about it is it's an unusual structure. It's verse, chorus, and then there's this bridge that takes us all to the end and sort of ascends and goes to a different place. And I don't know how we got to that, but I know it wouldn't have worked without it, I don't believe. Those lines are powerful, and the way you can put that emotion in it and bring it back down to earth is I think a very important part of the song. The reception has been very powerful for me and for John, I know. Because, with social media and all, you post a video and you see these comments. And I've had nice comments and really appreciative comments on other songs, but this one's different. This one is always showing the point of contact of why the song hit them. I lost my father a year ago. I lost my mother. It's the different people that they're saying who it makes them think of and who it's giving them a measure of peace that we're not telling them anything they didn't already believe. I don't think the song's powerful enough to do that, but it's just a reminder. It's just a reminder. And that is very powerful to have a song that does that for people. There's a few things I'm learning about having an album or putting out an album, and one of them is that it's almost like a photo album. You remember where you were at all the different pictures. Every song has all these memories of the write themselves, and I have to say I'm super honored to be here and grateful to be in this magazine because the songwriting is my favorite part of it all, if I'm honest. And so each of these songs has their memories about how I wrote them. For instance, two quick ones. One would be In a Bar Somewhere. Was written in a hotel room somewhere, that somewhere being Barbados. I was there to shoot the second season of Outer Banks. And we were actually still on quarantine because there was a lockdown. There was an 8-day quarantine in our hotel room. My wife and I, and it was about the size of this room, so we found out for sure that we really do love each other. But while we were trapped in there, I did some Zoom writes, and I had never really done one of those before, not done that many of them. So you're not sure how that will go, but I got on with Jason Gant and Neil Medley and wrote one of my favorite ones from the songs, In a Bar Somewhere. And what was so cool about that is, first of all, songwriting itself is always a magic trick to me. Not that I don't understand some of the techniques and some of the things you do and some of the ways that you songwrite, but I think for most songwriters, there's still that element of how did that happen? So it's weird. It's like a magic trick where even the magicians don't quite know how it works, which makes it really interesting. But even more so, perhaps, in a small room, 1,000 miles away from the people you're working with, and we were almost out of that room, and so by the time we're done, I got this song. And we got released and we were down by the pool, and I remember playing that song the next day down by the pool and everybody just vibing on it. Just sort of blown away that 2 days ago that song hadn't existed, and I wrote it on a Zoom with somebody. And I was blown away too. So that was a special one to realize that you can do this anywhere. You can make this happen in any moment. Another song that I love the writing of, because it's pretty also special to me, is that on a song called One Good Move, it's about my wife, and it's about me being an older guy looking back and not understanding how that young fool managed to make that one incredibly wise move of finding a way to hang on to her. So that seems like a song that I would have written with a bunch of guys my age looking back and going, oh, those wild times and all. But actually instead it was a song that I wrote with three young, relative to me, young and incredibly talented female songwriters, Zarni DeVette, Elise Hayes, and Sam Backoff. And we were at a writer's retreat, like just outside of town in the country there, that my friend Twinny had been kind enough to invite me to. And Twinny is just fantastic, and not just a great artist, but you know, for somebody that has come to this town from England, she is a real connector. She's an extremely hard worker, and so she brought all these people together and was kind enough to ask me. I have to admit, on that day, there are some times, and it has nothing to do about where you're going or what you're doing, you just don't feel like going. And you know, we're artists, we're not like crack the whip people, but there's gotta be a discipline there. And what I found over the years is those ones where I feel that resistance to going creeping up, like, oh, I'm so tired, or oh, I got that other thing this afternoon, I'm not gonna have it. Whenever I feel that, I'm certain that I better go because something good is gonna happen. So I've learned to use that feeling as a compass point to go, well, I don't wanna do it, well, clearly I have to do it. And I think one of it was, I didn't know anybody there. I was just gonna go and be the oldest guy there and spend a day out in the country and not be able to get away whenever I needed to. But I'm so glad I went, because we were at lunchtime, I'd already written a song with another group, we were mixing and matching, and then I was talking about, and I was sincere about how young writers, young artists, the things I was just talking about, the discipline required, the hard work, and sometimes for a long time before you finally start to make a little headway, and then you can lose. So I was just saying that I don't know if I could have done what you do at your age. I don't know if I was smart enough or had those qualities. I was, as I said it, I was not the smartest guy. I was a bad decision maker at that time. You put in a quarter and I'll give you a bad decision. But then I had to stop and go, you know what, except for one thing, my wife. I met my wife when I was 21, and somehow the fool that I was, I hung on to her. So that was my one good move. And I was just talking, and we finished lunch, and we go to write, and we get in there, and all three of them go, well, we're writing one good move. And I was like, what? And I hadn't even realized I'd said it. But they heard it, and they heard the potential in it. And so then Zarni sat down at the piano, and we just sort of gathered around, and she started that, and we started to write it. So that's one where I was talking about the distance, you know, from your co-writers geographically doesn't matter. Well, also the distance from your co-writers life experience-wise, and you know, and we're just different people, but I was sitting with these three people and our lives are utterly, absolutely different. I have, you know, 3 daughters their age. I mean, 3 kids their age, and yet we came together, and that's what empathy for somebody else's situation and understanding how to be emotionally intelligent enough to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So this thing started to happen, and that was one of those songs that before you even finish the second verse, you can't stop singing the first verse and the chorus. You just keep, all right, we better, let's move on and try to finish this thing, because it's a blast to sing, and it still is, and so I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful for that sort of magic right. It's more of an inside to outside thing than an outside to inside. I don't have this thought in my head that I really want to be a songwriter and therefore I'll write songs. I've never had that. What I've always had was I got these sounds in my head, I got these lyrics, I got these phrases to music, I got these things, and I literally can't stop. I realized when I was young that if I wanted to stop thinking of that line that was driving me crazy, I had to complete the song, I had to write it. And once I did that, then I'd be in the clear for a little while until another little thing crept into my head, and sort of, I enjoyed it for a while, but after a while it's like, oh my gosh, that feeling of incompleteness, that this is a line without a family, without a world to live in, but this is good, that somebody would like to hear that. So that's what initially made me fall for writing, is just, it was put in me, and it just was just a way to get it out in the most coherent, in the best way I could. And then secondly, when I was in college, I can remember having that thing and writing a song on a piano. And then I had met these guys, and that we were a band. They were in my fraternity, and we were just in the basement. And I remember we were actually pretty good. They were all great musicians, and so we started just doing covers. And then I wrote a song called Walk the Bridge. And Walk the Bridge was about a bridge there on our campus at William & Mary called Grimdale Bridge. I think this has been voted like one of the top most romantic spots on college campuses, and I think it was by Playboy magazine at the time. And the legend was that whoever you would walk across that bridge with and kiss on that bridge, that you would marry that person. And so I wrote this song just about the college, about autumn on the campus, then winter, then spring. But the coolest thing was then I took it that night to my band, and that's another level. That's when the square of songwriting becomes this cube, this other dimension where somebody's sort of putting a bass beat to it, a kick drum to it, and then you hear the bass kick in, and then you hear you're showing the chords to your guitar player, and then the keyboard player tries a patch, and you adjust it, and you move to that. And to watch this song come alive was just a thrill. And once you've done that, you're in the basement, and you're just banging on this thing, and it just is more than you could have imagined, but in a real sense, it's exactly what you imagined. That's how you heard it, and there it is. And then you go play a show with this band and this song you wrote, and you see people dancing and singing along to this thing that was just in your head. So it's just incredibly satisfying. For me, it's always been my therapy. It's a good way to get out these emotions. Life can be hard even at a young age. I was a child of divorce, and I'm not gonna over dramatize that, but there's times where it's very stressful. So just banging on a piano or a guitar was always, always there for me. Including when I sort of left the band and went to become an actor. All those years, I didn't have that other band, and I didn't have somebody else to write with and share with. I was just writing on my own, but it was always there, even when I had kids and all. And I'm blessed that my daughter, Taylor, who is a fantastic songwriter in this town, Taylor Noel, and she grew up with that piano there and watching me go work out whatever I had to work out, whether it was just exorcising a song out of my head or whether it was wanting to say something in a coherent way that helped me and maybe someone else. She saw that, and she's so great at it now. So it's always been a part of my life, and then the final part I can't leave out is coming to this town and being surrounded by the greatest songwriters in the world and getting to sit in rooms with them and find that I could hold my own, and that I never left a room feeling like, oh boy, I was the anchor, I was the boat anchor in that one. Of course, what I'm skipping is along the way I spent 20 years with Whose Line Is It Anyway, making up songs in a minute, and so there was something very easy about walking into a room here with great songwriters and taking hours and hours to do it. But that's I could go on, and I already have, but like I say, it means everything to me, and it helps me, it heals me, it lets me say things that you couldn't otherwise say. On the show Nashville, I played this guy, Deacon Claiborne, that wouldn't say much to you. He was a man of few words if you were trying to talk, but you put him behind a guitar and he'll tell you anything. That's what I like about songwriting. I always remember writing little ditties here and there. And at the time, they were probably copyright infringing in the extreme. It was like, I think I wrote a song that had the tune of Rockin' Robin, which was already taken from a lot of other songs. But the first one that I'm absolutely sure I did that on was in my elementary school. There was a contest when I was in 3rd grade, and I had just moved to this town from Pittsburgh. I moved to Virginia, and they had a contest of who could write the school song. There was also who could design the school flag and who could write the school song. Well, I went right after that song, and they said, find a Disney song and take the tune and put words celebrating our elementary school to that. And so they were teaching us copyright infringement at a very young age, and I went and I took a Disney song. I took It's a Small World, and I changed it to It's a Great School. So it's a great school after all. We got spelling, rating, a rim too, or whatever. I'm trying to remember the words. There's so much we can share, so let's all be aware it's a great school. And it won. And not only did it win, but it legitimately became the school song for years. I remember going back more than 10 years later, and there was an assembly they asked me to speak at. And before I did, they all got up and sang the Star Spangled Banner and the school song. So you talk about getting that adrenaline jolt early on of seeing people sing your words. yeah, I remember that very clearly, like going, oh, that's a thing. And then later I would write songs that were goofier, but nothing very meaningful. And then sophomore year, right even before I got in the band, my grandmother passed away. And she was a grandmother in Virginia that had helped raise me when my parents were divorced and my mom was at work. And she meant the world to me. And I loved her so much, and I had all these feelings and all these thoughts about her and all these details I remembered about her that moved me, but somewhere in my head it said, they're gonna get blurrier every day. Every day, this sharp picture you have of your grandmother and why you love her is gonna become more and more of a watercolor, and then it'll become abstract. And so I thought, what if I say these things in a song? And I literally, this song is just a story of what she did, like, one of the ones, Hummels on the mantle, letters on the floor. That's just 2 phrases. That's when I went to my grandmother's house. There's Hummels all over the mantle, and she would not pick up the mail on time, so there'd be letters on the floor. And it'll get me now. I was right. I can sing that song right now, and she's sharp as if she's there. And that was another thing, finding the power of songwriting, of capturing a moment so that you could hold it in your hand at anywhere you wanted at any time. I'm trying to remember, the part that's hanging me up is, when was I told it? Who told it to me? That part is a watercolor. I think I learned by watching I've never been in a write where even with great songwriters where they go, let me tell you a thing or two about how songwriting works. I get asked it all the time. So maybe of all the accumulated things I've learned, that's how I could answer you, is when somebody asks me, what advice do you have for a songwriter? A lot of the time, and I'll call them amateur songwriters because they haven't crossed that line to where they do it intentionally all the time. They're still doing what I did when I was in amateur songwriting, which is wait till a song strikes in your mind and then go try to write it. That's the one thing, and I do believe I was given that advice, is if you want to do this, like anything, you have to do it. That's all you have to do. My daughter, the first song she wrote was so great. Like, I think it freaked us out, and I think it might have freaked her out too, a little bit too. And I know this feeling so now the second one was taking a long time, because how can you match that? And I think I remember offering her money just to write. I go, I'm gonna give you 20 bucks to write a really bad song. And she's like, what? And we laughed about it. Why, why'd you do that? And I said, because number one, I think it'll make you write a song. And I don't think it'll be really bad, but if you're aiming there. So don't make the perfect the enemy of the good would be one thing I was telling all those people. Write, go write. If you pretend you're gonna go write 100 bad songs, and you might, Lord knows I have. But along the way, whatever else you are, you're a songwriter. You might be a bad songwriter at that point, but at least you're a songwriter. And if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it, my guess is that you're just gonna get better and better without all that pressure of, is every song a golden jewel? You don't want that. You just want to go create. Let it flow. And I didn't learn that even till later. In 2016, I did my Every Single Friday project, where I went out and I held my phone up and I told social media at that time, I believe Twitter and Facebook, I am going to release a brand new single every Friday until it's stupid. Why did I do that? I did that because I knew that I had been locked up in paralysis of analysis. I had just sort of, what about that song? I don't know about that song. And so I had a bunch of songs, but I wasn't doing anything with them, and I didn't know what was the first one. What's the EP? What's the album? I don't know. So finally I said, a voice in me said, just create, just go. Don't judge, just go. And so, of course there's some judging. I wasn't gonna put out something that I thought was bad. But so I had about 10 or so to go, and I thought maybe I would get to 20. And what I found happened was, it just unclogged the pipes. As soon as I started what it really was a deadline machine. I created a hack for artificial, not even artificial, the world's waiting. There's a lot of people going, where's your song? It's Friday. So it just forced me to create and create and create. And when I did that, once the pipes get clean, I was amazed by all the creativity that came in behind it. Once I started using up these songs I had, more were just coming because they had somewhere to go. There's something opening about that. And it was kind of thrilling. And so we got to 54 songs. I never, ever would have imagined that in a million years. As a kid, I wanted to be in the Guinness Book of World Records, and so I was always like, well, what can you do? What ridiculous thing? How many pieces of gum? You know, how many times can you hop on the pogo stick? And in the end, it was just doing something I loved so desperately and letting go of the results, just doing it. So that's the best advice I would give, is just do and do. Do it secretly, do it with people better than you once you get going. And there's a thing about acting real quick. Somebody asked Robin Williams, what advice would you give a young actor? And he said, I advise you to quit. And somebody said, why would you say that to them? And he goes, because if me telling them to quit is enough to make them quit, they should quit. This is a hard business. This is gonna break your heart. Honestly, if you're coming to me and saying, how do I become a songwriter? If you can stop, you might not be one. I bet you can't stop. So don't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Just keep going, just keep writing, is the best advice that I think I was given and that I could give. I have to say again, I'm just grateful for all those songwriters, all those co-writers, and all those days we spent together on them, caring about every line, caring that one was a little redundant, so this might be clearer. Clearer and cleaner is a recurring theme for me in my songwriting and in the songwriting of the people I love. I want it to sound super conversational. We just started doing a thing on socials where I think I'm gonna do it's called Say the Song. And while songs can definitely be more poetic, I think especially in the realm of country, I want it to sound super conversational, like something that somebody not only could say, but would say, and say it in the way you want. And I go back, and when I hear this album, I hear that all over it, and I really love that. I think some of that might come from the fact that I'm an actor, and one of the hardest things to do is find yourself in a scene and you go look at the page, and the line is like, I have an expectation that in the upcoming fortnight, and you're like, what? You know, I mean, that doesn't happen a lot, but I'm just saying that it doesn't sound like, you just go, I'm hoping that I'll see you next week. So you always want to, cut everything else away, what's the easiest way, simplest way to say it? And I look all over the album, and that's everywhere, like in When Love Ain't Love. I really want to find the quintessence of what a breakup is. And so that gets down to, it's hard to know just how it happens. You start off fine, you're both laughing. Somewhere, somehow, something changes. You find you're sitting there like strangers. I can't think of a word we could take out of that, or a word I would want to add. That happens again and again, even as I said in Somewhere in the Sunshine. You should see this place, it's beautiful, that whole thing. It says, I know it's been hard on you. And he knows it too, because he hears every word you ever cry. He hears every word you ever pray. And every tear running down and every single doubt. When you get here, he wipes them all away. And I'll be waiting on you till that day. So, I don't know how that became a goal, but it moves me. It moves me that to say big things in small ways, small real ways.